One is the adult perspective. We're watching this as it unfolds, and we're seeing it from adult eyes. And then there's this 6-year-old who's in the midst of all of this, and he probably doesn't know a lot about what's going on.
Fully
I'm sure it's very
comprehend the
confusing.
impact of this, huh?
He can't. He can only comprehend it from the perspective of a 6-year-old. So I'm sure he's aware of a lot of noise, a lot of commotion, a lot of activity, a lot of drama, a lot of emotion. But he doesn't have the capacity to integrate any of this into his personality at this time.
Could it be making him feel important in some ways because he is watching it and viewing this through a child's mind rather than an adult?
It could be. And so one of the things that we also have to be aware of is that the intent of the adults in his lives is very important. And if the intent is to be loving and protective of this child, that somehow gets communicated non-verbally. See, there's a lot of non-verbal stuff that's going on here and a lot of unconscious stuff that's going on that eventually what you want to do is to bring this to full consciousness so that this child has some sense of the story that he has been a part of that will become eventually his story and eventually part of his identity. That's the ideal, to integrate all of this into his story so that he can become whole and complete. Now that takes time, it takes skill, and it takes parenting, a lot of parenting skill.
So what you're suggesting, if I'm hearing you right, is that at some point the parents need to really talk to him about what he has been through and what he is feeling about this, and if he's having nightmares or any type of inhibitions because of this, then that needs to be talked about rather than suppressed and ignored.
Ignored, and I've heard a lot of people say, well, he's 6 years old, he's not going to remember what happened to him anyway.
Will he?
Well, that depends on whether or not the story is told and kept alive. Now, obviously, you don't want to bombard him with information, but I think it's very important. I don't think it's a good idea to hope that he forgets about this and act as if it never happened. It will affect him.
It's better coming from those who love him than it coming from people that he will eventually meet out in society, whether it's here in the United States or Cuba, and he gets back into the classroom and everybody knows about this, and he's constantly being hit with it from different
directions. And he
needs
to know that it's his story and that he has participated in this. I mean, there's a lot of 6-year-old children tend to live in a world of fantasy. Developmentally, that happens to be an age where fantasy takes over. Now, from a psychological perspective, the good news is that a lot of this trauma and confusion that has gone on will almost go over his head because children there's almost a built-in defense mechanism that will protect him from emotional scars that result from a lot of the activity that goes on. However, that doesn't mean it's not affecting him. It simply means that he is hopefully defended against some of the pain, some of the emotional pain that is associated with the events that have taken place. But eventually, in order for him to be healthy and whole, he'll have to experience and come to terms with what has really happened on an emotional level. And that will take time. That doesn't happen one day. It's not one event.
How important is it that these two families, who obviously have some strong political differences, as well as maybe other type of differences, how important is it for them to get back together for the health of Elian? Or is it better that they not get together because of the friction that exists and that could spill over to Elian and make things worse?
Well, because there seems to be friction between the two families, I think that what's more important at this time is for this child to have a sense of security and calm and peacefulness and quiet with his father and his stepmother and his brother. I think that they need that time to come together and just be able to deal with the events that have occurred in this family. At some point, I think extended family certainly becomes very important, but not now. That's not the immediate need.
And if he eventually goes back to Cuba, would it be harmful for him to be treated like some type of martyr there, some type of hero?
It might be harmful for him to be treated like a martyr or a victim it may not be so harmful for him to be treated like a hero. In a way, this story is a hero's story. I mean, it could be. I don't know if I'm making myself clear, and I don't want to minimize the events, but from a psychological perspective, here's a child who could potentially, he's very strong, hopefully he is psychologically resilient. He can be able to bounce back from this.
Another question that hasn't been talked about a lot in this is the cultural aspect of this situation. Does that play into this, the extended family, and because of at least what I know of the Hispanic culture, that the extended family is very important, and could this play into this in some type of way?
Well, in American culture, we know that the nuclear family is what we consider to be the most important. The mother, the father, the children are the nuclear family. And extended family is not considered to be as important. In other cultures, and in Cuba, extended family is extremely important. And so there is a sense that maybe an extended family member can almost replace an immediate family member. Now that's in direct contrast to the way we experience things.
And that perhaps explains why the fight was so strong from the Miami relatives.
I think that's part of it, and I think that the other part of it is that you know, we're calling it a custody fight, and I think on an emotional level, some people experienced it as a fight for freedom, and that's a very different fight than a custody fight, and so there are a lot of dynamics here that are going on.
All right, I know the clock is ticking away. In about 20 seconds, your profession has somewhat been on trial in this case. How has it fared?
How's it fared?
Yes.
I think that what you see is that psychologists have different perspectives, and so that there are many perspectives that need to be taken into consideration in this case. One side of the story is not the whole story. There's more that we don't know than that we do know that's going on in this situation, and I think we all need to be aware of that and be very cautious before we come to judgment on what's really going on.
Right.
And I wish this child well. I hope that his
We all do.
parents will be able to be strong for him so that he can become strong and whole.
You're right, and let's hope that 10 years, 20 years from now, we're reporting on some very productive things that this child has done in his life, and not an emotionally distraught child with all types of problems as a result of this. Dr. Gail Parker, thank you for coming in. It's always a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you.